Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Leighton Grey, your host, and this is Grey Matter. We're very pleased to have back on the show someone who would call a friend of the show. He's graced us with his presence a few times now. Really glad to have him back. It's Dr. Robert Malone. It's great to see you, Doctor. I hope that you're doing well. You certainly look great.
Well, thanks. It's kind of rainy here. The grass is jumping out of the ground, and I really bruised my left shin. My wife thought I broke my tibia, but the x-rays came back negative last night, so I'm just whining and limping.
Okay, well, we won't make you tap dance too much unless it's between the ears.
Okay.
Folks, everyone, I think, who's watching or listening knows you and knows that you're known for saying controversial things like what happens to confidence in public health and USG if ivermectin turns out to be safe and effective for COVID and the genetic vaccines turn out to have significant safety issues. You say this looks like a very plausible scenario for where I sit. And you were no less controversial. I want to take you here, if you don't mind, in talking about a recent incident. You said if your actual goal is to minimize the possibility of human to human transmission inside a sealed maritime environment, keeping a dead infected body aboard while confining hundreds of people into shared airspace seems like an odd strategy. So tell us about that. I think everyone knows what event you were talking about. Tell us about that, and maybe tell us a little bit about hantavirus. I'm sure you've been talking about this quite a lot recently.
Yeah, so unintended consequences, right? Bureaucratic edicts. The structure internationally, and this goes back literally centuries, probably millennia, is when a ship comes to port and it has evidence of an infectious disease outbreak. The general rule is don't let it come. Don't let those sailors, people come on shore. And of course, this has to do with plague and so many other things that reach back through history, and it's generally served the world well. But in this case, we are here in the 21st century, and we do have things like helicopters and medevac units, and we're no longer in the era of sailing ships. So here we have this case where in I guess the uh, transatlantic crossing, this ship MV Hondias, I think it's called, which is
Yeah.
an interesting um, cruise ship. It's not one of these multi-decked Princess Cruise Norwegian luxury liners. It's specifically designed, and we went to the website and looked it up and did the diligence. This is a relatively smaller cruise ship, specifically designed for explorations, particularly down towards the South Pole,
Hmm.
and it has the features of being, quote, very innovative in its design and capabilities and infrastructure, in particular focusing on the green agenda, minimizing CO2 emissions, and it has a whole bunch of novel features that have to do with air handling and so many other things. So, so this is not your usual cruise ship, and it has been on this adventure down in South America with adventurous, generally elderly souls that are bird watchers or otherwise, that are seeking out uh, bucket list experiences. I think, generally speaking, not
Yeah. Yeah.
overgeneralize. And
Hmm.
uh, unfortunately, two of them, a couple, became infected, and it looks like more than just those two, with the Andes strain of hantavirus. The data suggests that many more passengers were infected at some point. We don't know when, but it appears, based on the timelines for development of severe Andes symptoms, that these other passengers might well have been exposed in the transatlantic crossing rather than in the primary source back in South America.
Right,
And
right.
and so, that we have a situation where when they land in port, they're identified as having an infectious disease outbreak of unknown origin, and the port authorities understandably say, "Sorry, guys," and then I think they get sent back to the Canary Islands. Why the Canaries will take them, I don't know, but it probably has to do with money, usually, and, which is along the coast of Africa,
Mhm,
kind of the North Coast, and so the Canaries accept them, but they remain quarantined, and so you have all these sick people on this relatively small cruise ship compared to, say, the Diamond Princess or these other mega ships.
right, yeah, yeah.
You have people that, for some period of time, at least one person was deceased. And, then you have to ask yourself, well, is this evidence of a virus that is behaving unusually? Andes is
Mhm,
known for, being the rare, very rare example of a hantavirus that is known to have some limited human-to-human transmissibility, and
mhm.
that transmissibility is usually or historically associated with close contact and body fluid exchange. You can translate that however you wish. Uh, so, you have these elderly adventure seekers over stereotyping, that are on this boat that are all locked into the vessel together, and, uh, and this history of the particular virus that we learn, which is Andes hantavirus, that had some low-level human-to-human transmissibility history. Now, a caveat, there have been no reports of, uh, a serial human-to-human transmission, which is to say, I get it. I infect, say, 2 or 3 other people. They get it. They infect 2 or 3 other people, etcetera. When you see that pattern, that's when you have to think about epidemic risk. If you
Mm,
see
yeah,
have the virus or the cadaver has the virus or had the virus, um, and, uh, direct contacts get infected, but then secondary contacts have not been infected, that indicates something entirely different in terms of
mhm,
threat assessment, and that
yeah,
seems to be where we're at. Now the question is,
mm,
were these, bona fide human-to-human transmission cases? And here we need to, uh, you talked about gray matter. We need to
yeah,
process, um, Occam's razor, right?
right, mhm,
Most likely, explanation is usually the true one. Uh,
right,
um, the usual route of transmission of hantavirus is infected rodents, uh, producing rodent feces, which they do in abundance. I can tell you as somebody who manages horses and barns. Um, and those now there's another risk factor. Those feces can't stay in kind of wet form. They have to typically, and this is why Hanta is a problem in the Southwest of the United States where it's drier. Uh,
mhm,
it's probably not a big problem up in Canada. I haven't heard about
mhm,
a threat in Canada. Uh,
yeah,
and, but you want a dry environment which dries out these feces and enables them to turn to powder or dust.
mm,
And then
mm,
if you dislodge them like let's say you're a hiker, or a bird watcher and you've gone into some uh, cabin or something that's been abandoned or you kick over a nest of deer mice as you're doing your business, that's been abandoned, and you basically generate a powder that is
mm,
contaminated by hantavirus. That's the usual mode of transportation. Now,
okay,
the probability of a North American resident, particularly a U.S. resident, getting hantavirus is about 7 times lower than the probability of being struck by lightning, just to provide a little bit of context, okay? Um, it
yeah,
absolutely justifies the international press, getting their tails in a twist and making a big deal about this, and then Tedros amplifying it as
Yeah. I
justification
wanted to ask you about that. Is,
for
you know,
the
you're a world-renowned
justification for the pandemic
virologist and
treaty and for
yeah,
international health
yeah,
regulations. I'm
yeah,
I'm being sarcastic. Um,
yeah,
but that's how the things go, and of course, that bleeds into the current Ebola scare.
yeah.
There are multiple other agendas going on.
Now, Ebola is serious business, isn't it? This is a very dangerous virus, isn't it?
It is, and it is so hot. It illustrates the point that with these super hot or highly infectious, highly pathogenic viruses that are usually in a first generation of crossover, they've only
Yeah.
recently crossed over from an animal host into a human host, which is kind of where you often have the greatest risk because it's not fully adapted to humans. Because in general,
Mm,
viruses uh, and other pathogens, but particularly viruses, because they have such a high reproductive number, they often, like these RNA viruses, are very error prone in their
mhm, mhm,
genetic replication. That gives rise to very rapid evolution, and
mm,
so uh, generally speaking, and we saw this with COVID.
mhm,
When a virus first enters a human or a novel animal population, and it really applies for any species, when it jumps species uh, and it initially adapts to that new species, it is often highly pathogenic.
right.
SARS-1 was a great example.
Mhm,
Then,
mhm,
if it's enabled by, say, a purine cleavage site mutation that somebody's put in there, um, to efficiently transmit from human to human or animal to animal, then what will typically happen is the evolutionary biology of the virus killing its host efficiently will result in evolution towards the endpoint of a less pathogenic virus,
mm.
which is what we
Interesting.
saw, say, with Omicron was a classic example.
Right. Yeah.
More
Yeah.
infectious, less
Mhm.
pathogenic. That is totally
Mm,
classical viral evolution as it enters a new host species. So in the case
mhm,
of Ebola, it is so pathogenic. In other words, it causes you to die quickly unless you're able to
mhm,
get basically access to Western medicine rapidly. But
mhm.
you're out in the bush in Uganda, in a small village, the probability is that everybody in your village is gonna die, particularly anybody that is engaging in, mourning practices that involve touching or handling
Right.
or
Yeah.
extended, mourning of the dead, then it's likely everybody in your little village is gonna die out, and then the virus is gonna be functionally extinguished.
Mm,
And this is the history of Ebola. Now, what happens is if it gets into a major urban center, and of course, in this area of Africa where these crossovers are unfortunately more prevalent, uh, with the increase in population density, this becomes more likely.
mhm,
But
mhm.
still, the same dynamics apply. The virus
Yeah.
is highly pathogenic. It kills people fast unless they get quick intervention. And that I can tell you from having been at the tip of the spear with the West African initial major West African Ebola outbreak, where I played a key role in development of what's now, formerly the PHAC Ebola
Mhm,
vaccine based on
mhm,
Bacillus stomatitis virus, now called the
mhm,
Ebola vaccine. Um,
mhm.
so that the truth is that what happened there was that the virus was contained not through vaccination, not through drugs, but what's called in the epidemiology world non-pharmaceutical interventions.
Okay.
Now, how do you
Yeah.
translate that? What that amounts to is teaching the locals that they have not they shouldn't be touching the dead. They
Right.
shouldn't be having the dead lie in state and coming around and kissing and handling the dead. Uh, they should get those dead in the ground with PPE or incinerate them
Yeah.
as soon as possible. And once
Mhm.
that message kind of broke through into these rural, relatively uneducated environments where, by the way, the people bringing that message were often stoned and attacked because
Really?
the belief was that, in many of these villages, that these, care workers, Médecins Sans Frontières and other aid workers that were coming in to try to teach them were actually the ones bringing the Ebola virus.
Oh, I
And
guess you can understand how that thinking would develop, right?
yeah, foreign Westerners coming
Yeah.
in with their fancy Jeeps and et cetera, and of course, you could imagine that that's not so different from the conspiracy theories that flame up on the internet, here in the West. It's
Yeah.
different in kind, but not
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Similar
Yeah.
in kind, but
Interesting.
different in scope. So,
Yeah.
that's the dynamics there, and what'll happen
Yeah.
is that Ebola I saw this with the Africans that were presenting in for the African public health leaders that were at the WHO when I was there during that. Ebola makes people go crazy. It
Yeah.
absolutely. They just, the stark fear. You think people
Mhm.
are fearful over COVID. COVID doesn't
Yeah.
hold a candle to Ebola. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so people go crazy. There's guns involved and forced quarantines enforced with military. It's just ugly. And much like happened with the plague, back in the Middle Ages.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, um, what will happen is likely that we may have a few cases that enter North America, and they will typically be uh, care workers, missionaries, others that have been in those areas of Africa
Right.
that are bringing back, and there's already one physician case in the U.S.
Mm.
that because of their empathy and whether it's religious commitment like Samaritan's Purse,
Mhm. Mhm.
or their ethical commitment like Médecins Sans Frontières, they'll be in these regions trying to mitigate death and disease uh,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
low risk, and some of them will get infected and they will come back to the West. And
Mhm.
uh, what's happening here in the States, for instance, is that all of those that are returning, the State Department has made it very clear to embargo passports and travel visas to those areas. And for people returning, they all have to go through Dulles Airport. Unfortunately, that's the airport I use. Uh, they'll be dropping into Dulles and then being immediately routed to a strike team that will evaluate them for risk and then triage
Mm.
as necessary. So that's
Yeah.
that's what's going to go down. And after the West African Ebola outbreak, when we had a patient come into Texas and infect a couple of nurses and then pass away, um, you can be assured that the United States, and I am sure Canada also, has implemented rigorous training uh,
Mhm.
of personal protective equipment and protocols to ensure that we don't have another PR fiasco
Yeah. Yeah.
like that.
Dr. Malone, I want to ask you, you're a world-renowned immunologist and virologist. You're a pioneer in mRNA. You developed this uh, vaccine, helped this vaccine for the West Nile virus. Um, but the way that the World Health Organization has reacted to this, I'm curious to get your take because at certain times you've been critical of certain vaccines, but the director of the World Health Organization admits that the hantavirus outbreak is now being used to push a massive
Yeah.
vaccination agenda for children. He says it's safe and effective, and it's the only way to protect them. And so he's demanding that governments around the world give them more money, the WHO, to expand this vaccination agenda so that they can protect children. He says wider impact is expected. Should we be trusting the World Health Organization's advice on this at this stage, or should we be very skeptical?
Very skeptical. The WHO is very aligned with both UN and World Economic Forum. And
Right.
they are coming from a place of strong advocacy of socialism. Tedros is actually a
Yeah.
communist.
Yeah.
And they are multi-year, majorly backed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And one of their sore points right now, I could use stronger words, is that our President Trump has withdrawn from the WHO, and with that went about $500 million a year. So WHO is hurting. There was some announcements to that effect that they are facing a financial crisis, as is the UN, because of the Trump administration positions, and they are still smarting from the US and Argentina in particular, which, of course, Argentina relates back to this whole episode with hantavirus. But the US and Argentina under Javier Milei have withdrawn from the WHO and withdrawn their money, and they
Hmm.
represent a threat, a kind of an existential threat to the WHO and to Mr. Tedros because other nations may follow suit. And Tedros is actively involved in what many of us would characterize as a power grab globally
Hmm.
through the amended IHRs and the not yet validated proposed pandemic treaty. I think that
Right.
your
Yeah.
government is all in because, of course,
Yeah.
they have been infiltrated in their cabinets by
Yes.
clout.
Sadly true. Yeah.
Um, so uh, that's the context. Is that Tedros and the WHO have a conflict of interest here that's pretty clear cut,
Mm.
and they're
That's
acting.
sad. That's very sad, isn't it? Because that organization, in theory, could do a lot of great things, but it's a good example of how, and when an institution becomes so politicized and ideological and under ideological control, it becomes not only it not only perverts its original purpose, but it becomes almost an instrument of evil and wrongdoing, doesn't it?
So in the case of WHO, it's actually a little bit deeper than that. Um, what's happened over time is as nation states have become less enamored about sending large amounts of cash to Geneva
Right.
for this group, they have come to rely on private donations. And
Right. Yeah.
these are typically earmarked for
Yeah.
particular purposes and agendas.
Right.
And many of them come from the pharmaceutical industry, in
Mm.
particular from vaccine developers, as well as these foundations that have a uh, this kind of philanthrocapitalism business model like the Bill and Melinda Gates
Right.
Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so um, the WHO is compromised, consequent kind of structurally. Whether or not Tedros was there or somebody else was there, the structure of the capital that flows into WHO is intrinsically compromising
I
because
think I recall you talking about this in your first book. Didn't you talk about this a little bit in Lies My
I think
Government
I've
Told Me?
talked about it in just about every book.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's also in the book that I'm currently working on called The Grift.
Okay. Great.
But in it tracks the specific dollar volume and history. But
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
a lot of these things are structural. They will persist regardless of who the anointed leader is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um, Dr. Malone, I want to ask you about something that I saw you posted. You were talking about slitting the vocal cords of beagle puppies in government funded experiments. And this sounded, you described it as a barbaric animal testing that was taking place, something about a cordectomy. It's when you take a scalpel and you slit a dog's vocal cord so it can't bark, can't whimper, and can't cry. You were expressing concern about this, not only the amount of money being spent on it, which was almost $1.7 million of taxpayers' money, but just the whole concept of it. I know you are very closely connected to the land and animals. Is that what caused you to speak out about this particular
well, this
experimentation that's going on dogs?
this essay was prompted by a request from Maha Alliance,
Right.
which I serve as a medical advisor to,
Hmm.
in which they had a Wednesday. They do these Wednesday afternoon social media events in which they have a number of speakers. And
Mhm.
this particular one involved legislators and public advocates and others that are strongly opposed to animal research. And the beagle case is in, of course, the sandfly experimentation, etc.
Mhm,
Beagles
mhm.
are a standard dog model in
Right.
research, but one that has been increasingly uh, um, considered to be illegitimate uh, over decades. I mean, this was
Right. Yeah.
happening when I was at UC Davis as an undergraduate. They had
Mhm,
a beagle
mhm.
colony, and there were protests there over the medical research on beagles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the the arc here is that there has been a push in the United States in particular, but also, Great Britain and many of the former British colonies to be very sensitive to animal ethics and
Mhm.
uh, the use, or we could call it exploitation, of sentient animals. We're not talking about worm research or E.
Right.
coli research. We're
Mhm.
talking about sentient mammals uh,
Right.
that have cognitive processes that we're all familiar with, any of us that keep dogs.
Sure.
The logic that it is necessary to do animal research because it's less ethically challenged than doing human research on a new drug or intervention, and that animal research can predict and identify risks prior to, say, phase one clinical trials.
Mhm.
That has not been well borne out. That
Really?
it
Okay.
makes sense logically.
Mhm, mhm.
But as somebody who used to do animal research, I'm guilty as charged. I like to say, if mice can make it through the pearly gates, I'm in trouble. Uh, um, uh, so, um, but I don't do that anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and I didn't really feel very good about it at the time. Uh,
Yeah.
so, there has been a concerted push to recognize that the use of animal models in medical research, and particularly for preclinical research, is proving not to be as advertised in terms of its ability to detect
Mm,
risks.
mm.
And
Yeah.
the saying back from my old days is that we used to all share the kind of sardonic comment is that mice lie, monkeys mislead, and the only thing that predicts efficacy and safety in humans is efficacy and safety in humans. One of the problems
Right.
is that a lot of these animal models are inbred, and humans are
Mm.
extremely outbred, uh,
Right.
and getting more so. So, uh,
Yeah.
it's turned out that the underpinning logic, however compelling it sounds, is not what the data support.
Mm.
And so why are we doing it?
Yeah.
In particular, why
Yeah.
are we doing these things? And with this was a particularly egregious example, the cordectomies.
Right.
These
Yeah.
were being
Yeah.
performed so that the researchers didn't have the moral harm caused by having to listen to the cries of the animals that they were subjecting to these various procedures.
Mhm.
And it really
Wow.
brings into focus this issue of whether I think what as we move through the 21st century in retrospect, we'll look back and say those are barbaric practices. Why were we doing that?
Yeah. 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 It's so there's this tension between the need to develop new cures and vaccinations and things like that, and to discover things, but also this ethical question of whether or not we're doing harm or injuring and harming animals that, as you say, are sentient beings. They have thoughts. They appear to have the
Or
expression of emotions. At least
they
my dogs do.
experience pain.
Um, yeah, and so this is an interesting question, isn't it? And there isn't, I guess there isn't a clear answer. You're saying there might be. What we should be doing is in the balance, we should be weighing the efficacy of the research versus the harm being done to the animal. Is that
Absolutely.
a fair way of looking at it?
Yeah, and also promoting what are now emerging technologies having to do with
Right.
computational modeling,
Right.
cell-based modeling, high throughput screening, and
Mhm,
many of
mhm.
these kind of emerging, often robotic-based platform capabilities that are proving to be able to address many of these questions, or the use of organoids, so that you can basically have something akin to a liver in terms of its biology in the
Mhm,
plastic
mhm.
plate that can metabolize the drug or otherwise interact with it, and you can analyze gene expression markers or protein. You could do genomics and proteomics on these to see to predict what we might be experiencing in humans. And of course, you can do all this with human tissue. Now that feeds into the question of where does that human tissue come from, and
Right.
whether it's obtained from abortus tissue, and that's a whole,
Yeah.
there's just layers.
There's no end to the ethical
Yeah.
questions, is there?
Well,
Yeah.
as it should be, right? We
Yeah.
should we
Yeah.
should be
Yeah.
allowing ourselves as a community to take
Yeah.
the time to think before we act and not be
Yeah.
so reflexive. This is the essence of it bleeds an adjacency, is the gain of function research. Uh,
Yes. Right.
um,
Yeah.
do we really need to do these things? I think we
Yeah.
have to
And should we do them? Should we do everything that we can? Almost
technically
like Dr.
can.
Frankenstein
Yeah,
question, I can animate this collection of cadavers, but I might be creating a monster. Should I do that?
Frank
Yeah.
Shelley's Frankenstein is a powerful metaphor for modern biology.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what it illustrates is these fundamentals of human behavior, the dynamics of the court intellectual, the expert, uh, intellectual scientist,
Yeah.
that often gets caught up in a kind of a self-referential belief, uh, a narcissistic belief that they have the
You're
right.
talking about Dr. Fauci again. Just kidding.
Dr. Fauci is just an extreme embodiment. There's, I'm sure, 1,000 or 10,000 other scientists that if you put him in that position and gave them 40 years of tenure at the
Yeah.
highest salary in the US government, you would produce exactly the same kind of output.
Yeah.
I think
Unfortunately,
Fauci,
yeah,
in
it's
all of his
hubris.
glory, represents kind of the vector sum of the system and environment
Interesting.
within which he existed.
Interesting way of putting it. Speaking of interesting way to put it, I want to ask you about something else you posted on your Substack. You said, I want to tell you a story about regulatory failure. And whenever I read something like that from you, Dr. Malone, I know the rest is going to be really good. You say it is a story about an independent laboratory doing the work that federal regulators refuse to do. It's a story about benzene, a known carcinogen. Talk to us about why you posted this and what's the story behind this.
So, the real backstory is that, among other things, that I want to give you the disclaimer: the difference between grifting and not grifting is whether or not the product that you're advocating is something that you actually use, uh,
Okay.
or you just
It's a fair definition
talking
for
it.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I actively use, but I am affiliated with, as chief medical officer, a company called Curativa Bay that markets
Mm,
stabilized hypochlorous
yeah.
product. Hypochlorous, wrapping back to our discussion of cruise ships, norovirus, hantavirus, etc. Hypochlorous acid is something that was discovered in the 1830s, became the um, drug that saved life and limb, is how it was called back in World War One, but was forgotten after antibiotics came on. But now we have problems with antibiotics, and we need something that isn't toxic that we can use to sterilize surfaces, rooms,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so the context here is that, uh, hypochlorous is very active against acne.
Mm.
If you have a teenager.
Right.
There's a number of
Mhm.
companies that sell hypochlorous acid. The one that I'm affiliated with is the only one that has the reps and certs for use for wound and burn care and, activity against a variety of pathogens, and has been, determined by the EPA to be indefinitely stable in the proper container. So the problem
Mhm.
with hypochlorous historically is that it decomposes fairly rapidly, which is part of why it was abandoned because hospitals would have to have a machine producing it, because it would degrade so quickly, which was a problem,
Mhm.
another thing
Mhm.
to have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
benzoyl peroxide and other of these kinda topical, acne medicines, uh, um, in exposure to sunlight, they decompose to benzene. So benzene is a carcinogen, and
Mhm.
this is something that, has been well documented, and yet the regulatory apparatus, the FDA, kind of does a, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil game.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so the data are clear. We're having our teenagers apply this stuff and then go hang out, and explore the North Woods or live on the beach or
Yeah.
whatever it is that they do, and get exposed to sunlight, which is driving this towards benzene, which is gonna prevent
Mm.
cancer. And
Wow.
there is a credible alternative. So that's the framing of the essay is,
Right.
guys, this has been going on. You've been doing this to your kids. Here's a viable alternative. It's totally non-toxic. Um, Consider the alternative. So that's
Wonderful. Wow.
the kind of the arc
Wow.
of that essay.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I wanted to ask you, this is one a topic that is very near and dear to your heart, I guess. You wrote this really interesting piece about the great American food delusion, and you talk about you say it's one of the more revealing thought experiments that you envisioned recently began with a very simple question: what would happen if a household had a pantry containing a whole series of things like beans and brown rice, wheat, soybeans, rolled oats? Tell us about this, because I know this is something that's very close to your heart for you and your wife. The idea of growing food and living in a traditional way.
Traditional, yes, but also forward-looking. And the
Hmm.
context here is that, forgive me for another plug, the book Homesteading for Health that we've jointly authored is now, online on Amazon for pre-purchase. 2 weeks ago, I took the whole week. I recorded the audio version of it,
Wow. Is
and
this written with your wife again, like
yeah, yeah,
psyop? Okay,
yeah. And,
wonderful.
it reflects it's kinda got 3 parts. It talks about what brought us to this point. It talks about a lot of practical stuff. It
Hmm.
talks about the public policy stuff that has led to the destruction of the family farm,
Hmm.
decimation of a lot of small towns, the kind of the get big or get out logic that, the United States has an obligation to feed the world, etcetera. But the
Hmm.
core of it is, living simply and, recognizing soil as a living organism. So this has to do with regenerative
Right.
farming.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, in this case, it's kind of a derivative of this particular essay. We wrote this after the book was, in,
Hmm.
it's actually now in print. Uh,
Hmm.
but, it was, as mentioned, a thought experiment. If we run into a period of major crisis, like, say, the Strait of Hormuz doesn't open, and
Right.
and the price of diesel here in the States is going down, but I was paying over $6 a gallon for diesel fuel. That's a little bit
Oh,
painful.
yeah.
When you
Yeah.
fill up your truck and it's over $100, approaching 150, that's not so fun.
Hmm.
And, likewise your tractor and everything else because we're mostly diesel here. Uh,
Yeah.
and, so, uh, thinking about, if we do head into a major economic crisis as some, nattering nabobs are predicting, what can the average person do? I'm
Mm.
my wife and I are fortunate. we work our cans off and we have money in the bank. But for the poor soul who's living on the edge, this is a crisis.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
even more so if it persists into the winter when they have
Mhm.
fuel, uh,
Yeah.
heating bills.
Yeah.
So what can they do? Uh,
Mhm.
and so the thought experiment was, well, what what if you had to really cut back and move back to a diet based on staples, like, by the way, most of the rest of the world lives on. Um,
Yeah.
and could you do this? Could you stockpile enough to carry you through say, a 6 to 9 month crisis period
Mhm.
where you had restricted food availability because of transportation and fuel costs, etc.
Mhm. Mhm.
Could you live on a simple diet of staples? And
Yeah.
so that's what the essay lays out is, well, yes, you could.
Yeah.
And you could do it quite cheaply if you commit to one of the problems is a lot of people don't know how to cook. And it's just, at least here in the States, and I suspect it might be the same in
It is, yeah, we've
certain
yeah, skip
there's
the dishes and DoorDash, yeah,
DoorDash, right?
it's created a
Yeah,
problem.
so if DoorDash is not an option because otherwise you will starve because you don't have the money, what can you do? And
Yeah,
you can cook rice and beans and, use eggs, which are an amazing
yeah,
source of protein.
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
so is this really realistic? The essay goes into analyzing the caloric requirements
Mhm.
and the overall dietary requirements, and can you sustain yourself for a reasonable period of
Mm.
time using a very, simplistic, uh, diet? And the answer is abundantly yes, and you would save a boatload of money. Uh,
Yeah,
so that's the thrust of that, and that's where it comes from
yeah,
kind of, if necessary, um, to build resilience.
yeah.
Uh,
I
and
get the impression from the way that you talk about things like growing food and the land, that you and your wife have a very deep connection to land, though, almost a spiritual and emotional one, so that it's actually part of your whole concept of living a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about that a little bit because that might seem strange to some people, but I found it really refreshing and almost it triggered something almost ancestral. I thought, wow, this is really cool the way he talks about having this connection to the land. You want to talk about that a little bit, or is it too
So
personal?
so I no, it's not too personal. It's fundamental. I mean, I'm sitting here in an old pig barn, that was built in 1945 that I rejiggered into this studio. These open beam ceilings are not a artifice. Uh, they are, you know, 1940s wood, uh, uh, still sitting here with a old
Yeah.
metal roof on top. So, m Jill and I have, uh, basically been involved in both academe and the intellectual life as well as in small farming, uh, our virtually our entire lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, it's part of what brought us together as young teens, because we both had a love of horses and riding in the outdoors.
Hmm.
It's a big part of what brought us together, and,
Hmm.
we were fortunate to grow up along the Central Coast of California, where it's easy to live outdoors and, very temperate climate. Not so easy, in Virginia, and certainly not so easy in Calgary. Uh,
Right.
but, uh, but the but the fundamentals here, once I've had to live in urban centers. We had to live in Chicago when I was going to medical school,
Right. Yeah.
and we just find it miserable.
Yeah.
When we have to go up to Northern Virginia or DC, my wife, gets edgy. Jill just
Mm.
does not like having a lot of people around her. She doesn't like those urban or even suburban environments. We like to be out where our neighbors are. And we love our neighbors, but we'd rather
Hmm.
have them not quite on our back doorstep. Uh,
Yeah.
and we value, personal autonomy. We are fundamentally libertarian,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we like to live free
Hmm.
and have latitude to do what we want to do when we want to do it. We accept the responsibility of uh, ensuring that we maintain economic viability and take care
Mm.
of business. But we would prefer not to have the state in our back pocket all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a and then we grew up reading the Sand County Almanac and Rachel Carson's uh, um, Silent Spring and in the '70s, right, when there was this whole Back to Nature, the Whole Earth catalog,
Right.
and all of that. That's kind of the time frame in which we matured as
Mm.
intellectually, and so
Yeah.
this is home base for us.
Hmm.
And then is to be grounded in the land, and then, uh, I was a we were backpackers, the horse thing. I used to be a rock climber, spent a lot of time in Yosemite Valley, did the Muir Trail at age 15. This is kind of where I come from, worked
Yeah.
on a dairy farm in the summers. It's what I am and what Jill
Yeah.
is, but in our more recent journeys, uh the farm that we have right now is scenically beautiful. We're up against
Hmm.
the Shenandoah National Park, which is very old mountain range in
Yeah.
Virginia,
Yeah.
uh, and we sit in a little, hollow with 2 rivers on it. One is a large creek, and one's a small creek. The Robinson River is one farm away, which is a major, river here in Virginia, and, but the soil is poor.
Mm.
We have, this, clay that is typical of the South, not much, if any, topsoil. We kinda compromised in buying this, uh, in a time when we had no money. We
Hmm.
literally homesteaded it.
Right.
Um, but, it's scenically beautiful, but less fertile than I would have preferred.
Yeah.
So then you're in the position of, well, what can you do about it? And that gives rise to, uh, um the, uh, composting, the one of the lovely things about horses is they produce manure, which a lot of people think is a problem, but I think is his blessing because I can take that manure and the stall shavings and everything else and the urine-soaked shavings, put them all in a great big pile, at the back and, let it cook, for 6 to 9 months and turn it over from time to time with my tractor bucket, and out comes beautiful soil that grows stuff like crazy, so what's not to
Wow.
like? Um,
Yeah.
so that's kinda where the book goes in many ways.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes what you can do
Hmm.
to, improve, the soil and recognize that it is living.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the modern, agribusiness world, it's not treated as a living organism. It's
Right.
treated as something akin to a substrate for hydroponics, where
Uh,
we pour, uh, you know, uh, oil-based, fertilizer, uh,
yeah.
nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, 10, 10, 10 onto it, and in so doing, we poison the earthworms and the nematodes, uh, in order to get the corn to grow, but, we're doing that at the expense of the living soil, so and every time you plow, you break up those, communities
Yeah.
and the mycorrhizal networks, and you destroy its utility as a living organism. So hence the
Hmm.
growth. I suspect it's just as hot down there up there as it
Yeah.
is here,
Yeah.
no-till farming.
Hmm.
That's all coming from that place of respecting the soil as a living organism, but most folks aren't familiar with these ideas,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the most importantly, they're not familiar with the science behind it.
In the Judeo-Christian tradition, man, Adam is fashioned from the earth. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that connection. And it seems to me that a lot of our health issues and maybe some of the other deeper issues sort of computations and permutations of that, maybe they're connected to a disconnection from the soil, because as human beings, we have this
I think there's
connection
a
to the
lot to be
soil.
said to that. I think I support that, and I also support the idea of us being shepherds of,
Right.
the our environment.
Stewards. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
not just animals.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we
Well,
we don't
before
we don't own this land.
no.
We we occupy it and we pass it on to the future.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those of us in the Christian tradition, we abide by Psalm 24, which says that the earth and everything that belongs to the Lord, and which means, as you correctly state, we're stewards. We've got a job to do, and uh, God bless you and your wife. You're doing a splendid job of that. I want to just go over some of your books. So we've Lies My Government Told Me and The Better Future Coming has to be one of the best books I read about COVID. War, that's another brilliant book that you wrote with your wife Jill. The book you talked about that you just published with your wife is, I guess, the third book. Now, is The Grift another project that you're writing jointly with your wife Jill?
Yeah, together with another, gentleman who used to be an interviewer for Fox News named
Mm,
Rob Nelson.
okay.
And he's bringing, first-person interviews and podcast information into
Mm,
the book to kind of allow readers, because both The Grift and the other one that is currently being edited for publication, uh, which is called, The Chronic Rebellion, which is a history of the Maha movement and a projection of where it goes.
yeah.
That one and The Grift are deeply analytic. In a way, The Grift is the 3rd in the series if you take, Lies,
Right.
then War, then
War.
The Grift is kinda
Ah,
the retrospective look
it's the
back
trilogy.
of
Mm,
at
yeah.
COVID, and it frames COVID within the context of, grifting,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
turns out to be a very useful metaphor. Uh, there was a heck of a lot of grifting, um,
Yeah.
and it kinda cuts across a lot of different aspects of what we all experienced. So it's that book is, um, uh, maturing nicely. It needs Rob's interviews in first person,
Mhm.
so it makes it a little more accessible to the average reader and puts you in the, uh, the the mind of people that experience this stuff, much like, Lies did. A
Yeah.
lot of Lies is first person, "This is what I experienced,"
Yeah.
or it's
Yeah.
telling a story like Pierre Corey or whomever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I found that your first book especially really compelling. Also enjoyed Wars. Those are the two of yours that I've read so far. Um, and, Dr. Malone, before I let you go, I wanted to give you a chance to maybe tell people where they can find your work. We talked about your Substack. You publish, I don't know where you find the time to write all these books, and you publish,
it's our job.
it seems like daily on your Substack.
Yep, we do.
Where else can people find you and follow you and support your work?
So the Substack is malone.news, and some of the fact checkers have listed it as a conspiracy site, so be careful.
Which
Um,
means it has to be really good.
um, so malone.news, and then on X, it's at RW Malone MD, and the same handle on Gab and Truth Social. I
Mm,
don't post on
wonderful.
Getter anymore just because it's kind of a dead site. So those are the social media hooks. And then I travel all the time, often lecture in various places. So there's that. Uh, if I was at Calgary
I
last year.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I missed the opportunity to meet you in person. I'm hoping you'll come back to Canada sometime soon. I'll get to
I don't.
shake your
I,
hand.
I may have to wear battle armor. Um,
Well,
uh,
that's a badge of honor if you're an American coming to Canada.
okay.
Uh, yeah, but
Well,
Dr.
there's
Malone,
talk
yeah.
about doing a CPAC Canada.
Oh,
If
great.
that happens, then I certainly would go.
Wonderful.
But, time will tell, and thank you
Yeah.
for the opportunity to,
Yeah. Well, it's always a
speak.
pleasure talking with you. And I mean, it's impossible to keep up with you and your wife and all the things you're doing, but God bless you and all the work you're doing on your farm, not your ranch, your farm. and all the
Yeah.
incredible writing. I really enjoy your Substack and following all the things that you're doing. So, again, thanks very much for taking time out to spend some time with us and our viewers here on Gray Matter. It's been a real joy having you on the program again.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity, and stay healthy. If I can make the parting comment that I often share with the various disaffected gubbies that come down to visit me. Um, Remember that when you're faced with a ethical decision in particular that you feel uncomfortable with, that maybe your boss is telling you to do, that every time you make one of those compromises, you give away a little part of your soul.
Mm,
And when you reach old man status or gray hair status like me, uh, you can end up really hollowed out.
yeah,
And so think hard about whether those compromises are really worth it, because whatever you're getting for compensation, salary or otherwise, is it worth the loss of part of your soul? And when you think about it that way, it becomes a lot easier to just say no when you're asked to do stuff that
yeah.
you don't think is right.
Now, there is a pearl of wisdom. Thank you for that and for being with us here today, Dr. Malone. It's been a real pleasure talking with you again.
Bye-bye.
Hungry for truth beyond the television? Well, extend the conversation with Gray Matter online. Gray Matter's insights continue in your inbox. Subscribe to our Substack newsletter where we dive deeper into the spiritual battles facing Canadian families today. Equip yourself to stand firm in your faith and lead with godly wisdom. Join our growing community of truth seekers at substack.com/graymatter newsletter. Subscribe today and never miss the Canadian perspective on what matters most. If you value the conversations we have here every week on Gray Matter, then you know the cultural and legal battles we're facing aren't just political, they're spiritual, and they're fighting the very foundations of Western civilization. If you're ready for an uncompromising, legally precise defense of our civil liberties, our traditional values, and the rule of law, Leighton's new book, Trials, Tribulations, and Truth, was written for you. Join the defense. Grab your copy of Trials, Tribulations, and Truth on Amazon right now by clicking the link in the show notes, or go to thegraymatterpodcast.com. The battle has always been over people and ideas, but they're just the targets. The real enemies are spiritual principalities and powers. Gray Matter's purpose is to reach out with the voice of Christian truth to men between 18 and 44. We believe that these sons and fathers are Christ's inheritance. Join us financially and help us to speak so Canadians hear truth that sets men free and brings families to Jesus. Contact us by email at graymatterconnect@gmail.com or mail us at Post Office Box 2436, Fort Macleod, Alberta, postal code T0L0Z0. Thank you for your support.